Lesson 20 about love and war. That's why I'm wearing my helmet today. So in Lesson 20, we're going to talk about one of the most famous events in Greek history. And it's almost a movie. You go to the movies, they have movies on Helen of Troy or the Trojan War or the Trojan Horse. And it's over and over in books. And it was written by Homer in the Iliad, but he depicted a historical event and then adds some fiction when he added into some Greek gods and goddesses that were involved in the midst of all of this, which that part was not true. But let's talk about this mythology. Mythology is basically myths that happen, but we know now that the Battle of Troy was a true historical event, too. So the Trojan War was raised against what city? Troy. And it started from a very family matter, a big family matter, a very jealous between two jealous, a prince and a jealous king. Well, there's a prince, and his name was Paris, and he was the prince of Troy. Well, he had fallen in love with Helen, and Helen had been taken as a wife for a king of Sparta. Menelaus was the king of Sparta. Well, the Spartans were warriors, and they fought for everything, and they never backed down. They were noted as being warriors, and they had a great armor that they used, and swords, and they were strong. When they were little boys, they were all taught to be soldiers and to fight. Even some of the women were taught to fight, and the little girls. That was what it was to be a Spartan, that you were to be a courageous warrior. Not quite like the people of Troy. Well, Troy was actually across the Aegean Sea, so was really not considered a so-called Greek city. But there were two specific cities, pretty close, although they were separated by water. And so the Trojan prince Paris decided to go and abduct Helen, the wife of the Spartan king. Now we know there was probably a great deal of love, that Paris was so in love with Helen, and she had become this Spartan king's wife against her will, maybe. But we know there was some kind of a love triangle there. So he came and he actually took her home. You think that would be the end, but of course the king became very angry. And he thought, I would want my wife back, even though he probably had other wives, because back then those kings did, but he wanted Helen. Helen must have been very, very beautiful, don't you think, for two great kings, a prince and a king, to be fighting over her? I don't know. Either that or she was very, very beautiful and very nice. I don't know. But so anyway, Menelaus, King Menelaus, I think how you say his name, the Spartan king, demanded her return, and the Trojans, of course, refused. And so then he persuaded his brother, who was another Spartan king, Agamemnon was his name, to lead an army against Troy. Well, Agamemnon was a very big warrior, and he was one that would never, never give up, at least they thought. And so this is all recorded in the Iliad, and the gods took sides on each. You know, we have Poseidon and all these gods trying to fight, and they're fighting too, along with these two kings. That part is pretty much fiction. But the Greek drama goes on, and as we see, it goes on for quite a long time. The love triangle fighting goes on for 10 years. Can you imagine that? 10 years of fighting. And so the king of Sparta goes to Troy, and it surrounds the city of Troy and the walls of Troy and tries to get in. The Trojans, they fight back. They don't let the Spartans in. And then they lay siege, and they won't let anybody in or out, and they're fighting on, and all these things are happening. And A siege is when basically they're waiting for them to run out of food and water, but for some reason they didn't run out of food and water. They had secret ways of getting food and water into Troy. So the military techniques then become very strange, because the king of Sparta pretends to withdraw and to give up, and he actually leaves a horse there. Not just any horse. He leaves a horse, a huge, gigantic wooden horse. And you can look in your book and see a picture of, there's a replica, a huge, gigantic horse. For like, then they had statues, of course, and a wooden statue would be like, oh, is this a gift? So the king of Troy thinks, oh, they decided to have a truce and they're leaving a gift. So they go in and they roll this big horse in and they close the gates. Not a good idea, because the king of Sparta had left some specific men, soldiers, inside the horse. What happens next? During the night, the soldiers inside sneak out of the horse and they open the gates of Troy and let their comrades in. So the fighting goes on in the midst of the night. The fighting goes on, and of course, the Spartans overcome the city of Troy. And from that point, we don't see Troy in the history mentioned very many places, except that it was overcome by the Greeks, which were the Spartans, that they had come and taken over the city of the Troy. They had conquered Troy. The real war took place 1250 to 1180 BC. Troy is gone forever, but the Spartans were forever known for their military strength and their abilities and their courage. And for Greek history, every Greek little boy wanted to be a Spartan. That's what happened. The Battle of Troy. So we're going to go on, but I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to go on to talk about a little more about this ancient history and where it started and the cities that are mentioned in your book. I love you.